Hey everybody, welcome back to Electric Cafe. This video is an album review on Delerium's 1997 album Karma. Of course, Delerium is their first time on the channel, their ninth overall album under the name Delerium. Of course, Delerium is Bill Lieb and Reese Fulber, both from Frontline Assembly, who they do industrial music under. They also record under, or Bill Lieb records under Synesthesia, which is a little bit more ambient. Delirium is a little bit more ethnic, ambient, down tempo vibe. This is a fairly long album, 11 tracks, 75 minutes. It's a long album to listen to. I think there are some good things about this album. There are some things that are unfortunate about this album as well. Um, it's kind of I mean, you're obviously going to get the comparisons to Enigma or the Bedouin Monks or Deep Forest. Those are just some examples of early '90s, um, ethnic style, chant style, sort of a Eastern down tempo music that kind of verges into ethnic ambient and ambient music. Although I really feel like it's more down tempo because there's beats in here, and generally if things are beats, it kind of is it ambient music if it has any beats, and that's sometimes I struggle with calling things ambient when it has consistent beats, like most of these, if not all these songs have consistent beats. Now there's some moments where there's 2-3 minutes of ambient music and sort of a track is building up on here, and that is more ambient. So I certainly I'm not like upset when people call things ambient or not, like that have consistent beats in it. It's not a big deal, but I would say this is more on the down tempo side than more on the ambient side. Obviously, Sarah McLachlan's featured on a couple tracks in here, and she's certainly a highlight. I thought she was actually going to be on this album a little bit more, and I was a little concerned. I a lot of times I don't like um, singing on music that I tend to think is more better instrumental, and so I was a little bit concerned that it would be a deterrent that there were so many people singing on here. But I'm glad to say that the singing was a positive side of Sarah McLachlan's songs, and the other girl who sings on a couple other songs. I do feel like their singing is it really helps a lot of the songs. Especially when Sarah McLachlan hits her higher notes. I mean, it's just really nice voice and it goes really well. Um, like on the track Twilight, which is one of my favorite songs on here. I really like the change at like a minute and 25. The production is strong on this one. I feel like. Um, well, I'm sorry. Track three doesn't have Sarah's voice on it. I feel like it would have been even better if it had Sarah's voice on it. I think it was track number one and track number four had Sarah's voice on it. Obviously, Science has it. Track number four. But I think number one did also, if I'm not mistaken. But I feel like Twilight would have been really nice if it had Sarah's voice on it as well. As far as the tracks individually, Enchanted, the first track is one of my favorite. I give it 3 stars. Um, Track number two, Duend, I gave it a star and 3/4. It was okay. Couldn't really say it was good. To that level, it does have some potential, but I feel like it doesn't really quite get there. Twilight, 3 stars. This is probably my favorite song on the album. Silence, I think, is no doubt a good vocal. But I've never been a fan of that song and the trance versions. This is probably my favorite version. If I'm sure if I heard more, I've heard quite a few of the trance versions over the years, and I do feel like it's better. Even though I respect it as more of a trance song because it was played so much as a trance song, I do feel like in its original form, I respect a lot more, and I do give it 2.5 stars. I think it is a good song. I don't know if I can really say it's a very good song. Um, and then the album kind of struggles a little bit for me. There's a lot of dated beats on here, and the dated beats don't really necessarily distract me, but they don't help things. So I don't think really they're very typical ethnic ambient beats that I would expect from most of the '90s albums that I know that are trying to be all kind of like worldly and ethnic and mystical, and the ones that don't really, that don't really do much for me, unfortunately have dated beats like these. And that doesn't really necessarily put me off on a lot of the songs or even the whole album as a full. Um, it's just not helping. It's just not helping things. Um, the song "Twilight" is a good example of the basic drums, but everything else is better helping it. The strings are solid on that track. It added some much needed layering and depth, like in Duende. I felt like it does a better job of that. But the keyboard depth on Twilight is better. That's why it's one of my favorite tracks on here. Um, but it's just a very long album to get through. Forgotten Worlds, track number 5. Again, kind of a dated beat. And here's a good example of kind of my struggle with this album and feeling like it's a good album. The bass line is solid. The piano and the keyboard is kind of a side trance and trancy and kind of builds up and then it sort of just goes back into the beat, and which is not a strong side of the song. The voices aren't so bad on this song. There's a couple tracks earlier, I think it might have been Duende or Enchanted, where just the background vocals and chanting and the kids sound like I think it's on Enchanted, they're just kind of lackluster and just really kind of dated, and it kind of feels like they're doing like a down tempo song, and they're just like, okay, we need some sort of mysticism, spiritual Eastern. Let's throw some chanting kids in the background, or let's throw some chanting people on the background, and it just sounds very dated, and it sounds. I'm kind of surprised that this is 1997 in a way, but not fully. Um, it's just the beats don't really help it, and there are a few tracks that have some good strings and have some better progression, like Remembrance. Has is kind of like it's a long song, so it's like 7.5 minutes, right? 2.5 minutes just to build up to a cool bass line. And I don't mind instrumental parts, and I do like ambient parts, but um, it seems like every song is almost a chore to listen to because every song is trying to be grandiose and an epic track in a way, and the album becomes very almost to the point where the album is a little bit anal and self-indulgent to where like I don't know. Oh man, it's a struggle to listen to this album. 75 minutes, and I mean, it's a little disappointing. But like going back to Remembrance, this one's the only track that is a little bit deeper and darker, and it kind of saves the track. Like the melodies at 3.5 minutes have some potential, and at 5 minutes and 20 seconds has some potential, but it really doesn't get there. And the good bass line and the well layered melodies in this song still don't fully save the album. So I mean, save the song. I give it 2.25 stars. I feel like Remembrance is better. Going back to track number 6, Lamentation, 1.5 stars. Euphoria. The voice is all right here. 1 star for Euphoria. Lamentation, the progression of the track isn't bad, but for over 8 minutes, I gave 1.5 stars. Wisdom, I gave 1.5 stars as well. The voices and the layering of them are pretty good. Everything else is pretty average. The harmonies are pretty good. Just the music is kind of lackluster. Just 1.5 stars for Wisdom. The Quran, 1.5 star. Until the End of the Time, 1 star. Is just okay tracks. I mean, the last three tracks are just all okay, and they're just way too long and way too self-indulgent, and really don't. I can't think of. I think of the voices as being the positive part of this song. There are some good layering on this album, of melodies, but none of the beats. There might have been one bass line or two bass lines in here that I felt were that sort of helped the beat, but just kind of lackluster. And I hate to be a downer on this album that somebody recommended this, and I'm not really fully feeling the album. It's kind of typical down tempo beats for Eastern sounding, and it's just kind of lacking some darkness, some lacking some really kind of deeper kind of Eastern sounds. They're fairly basic and a little bit cheesy, a little bit obvious, and somewhat there's a couple of songs where they're kind of distracting because they're so kind of typical and corny and cheesy. I don't know. I don't know. I hate to give a bad score on an album that somebody recommended me for listening to, but I'm sorry. I just can't get into it. I wouldn't buy this album, and I probably would never want to hear it again. I don't think it's horrible at all. I think it's subpar for Bill Ebe to do this album. I gave the album a 48 out of 100. I think it's below okay. I think it's not very good. I think it's subpar. I add up the stars. I got 21.25 stars divided by 11 songs, which is a 1.93, which kind of correlates to about 48 for me. So I can't really give it any extra points. I almost feel like, sadly, kind of taking away points because it it was 75 minutes long. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of sad that I'm a little disappointed that I can't give it a better rating for the person that recommended this. I just do I think it's better than Deep Forest? Sure. Do I think it's better than Bedouin Monks? Sure. Do I think it's better than Enigma? Sure. But considering those were all done in 1990, 91, 92, and this is done in 1997, I don't know. Just kind of dated, especially for 1997. Again, I'll say some of the melodies and some of the Eastern sounds, even though a little bit dated, they are above average, but they don't save the album, and really the only thing that I would suggest maybe to listen to this album is because of the voices are above average for the style of music, and certainly Sarah McLachlan has a great voice, and there's some parts on Silence, and I think the other track Enchanted where I'm like, wow, like the combination of the two could really do something, and I was really kind of looking forward to this album to progress more, but she's not on the album anymore, and then the other girl that's on here does a solid job, like in, I think it's the track Remembrance, like, but her appearance on Euphoria, and I think it's then on Wisdom, probably the best things on the song are really her voice, but they really couldn't carry it to kind of carry the lackluster music on here. Um, if I can suggest any albums to listen to for the person that suggested this, check out some of the music on Waveform Records. There's some Eastern sounding stuff on there, like the artist Tuuu, or maybe even Sounds of the Ground, maybe. There's some other stuff that I would recommend to them. They may not have the voices on top that are as good as here, but I think the melodies and the rhythms and the beats are all a lot better than this. And So sorry I can't give it a great score. You know, I tried and it was a long album to listen to, so I felt like I tried hard. But I'm sorry to say it's just not a very good album, and a little bit disappointing that Bill Lieb's involved in making this album, and just a little too long and a little too corny. You know, just the voices can't really help the production on here, and just the songs are too long. You know, and I almost feel like maybe if they kind of edited this and made it 7, 8 songs or even 6 songs, it still would have been 40, 50 minutes, and it still could have been at least a little bit more concise. But yeah, apologize in advance if you're not happy with my review on it, but I'm sorry, I can't give it a good rating. It's 48 out of 100 for me. All right, thanks so much.